Good evening, Hilltop. Good evening, Hilltop. Thank you all for coming out this evening. My name is Nick Bankston. I serve as the project manager for neighborhood transformation strategies for the city of Columbus. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Meredith McDougall, the executive director of the Hilltop Shalom Zone, to give us our welcome. Meredith?
Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to this evening's Envision Hilltop presentation. My name is Reverend Meredith McDougall, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Greater Hilltop Area Shalom Zone. Over the last 9 years, the zone has worked to bring community members together to address community concerns. And over its history, the Greater Hilltop Area Shalom Zone has remained committed to improving the quality of life in the Hilltop. To that end, our organization has offered summer day camps for youth and children, an after-school program at West High School, and there is a new program called Ville on the Hill, which is offering residents of the Hilltop age 50 or better a circulator bus, lift rides to doctor's appointments, and opportunities to socialize and volunteer right here in this community. We would love to continue the conversation about the Envision Hilltop Plan and other community needs at our monthly partners meetings, and those are held on the fourth Tuesday of every month. This month, I'm inviting everyone to come to the Hilltop Library, where we will, on January 28th at noon. You're all invited to join us. So when I first began working with the Greater Hilltop Area Shalom Zone about 4.5 years ago, I was struck by the deep pride and investment that long-time residents of this community have in their neighborhood. And while I agree with Mayor Ginther that Columbus is certainly a city of neighborhoods, I would also say that the Hilltop is a neighborhood of neighborhoods. It's not always been easy to bring the different groups within the neighborhood together to work towards the common goals of improving the Hilltop. So I have been really inspired by the work that has been done by so many people here for so many months, engaging in this community planning process. It is my hope and my prayer that the resulting plan that will be discussed tonight will not be the end of the conversation, but rather the beginning of a continuing conversation about what this community dreams for itself and for its future. It is my privilege to introduce our partner in this work, Mayor Andrew J. Ginther, who from the beginning of his time in office has prioritized empowering and uplifting Columbus's neighborhoods as his top priority. Moving into his second term, his team will be working in partnership with community members, organizations, and other stakeholders to implement the recommendations in the Envision Hilltop Plan. So please welcome Mayor Andrew J. Ginther.
Thank you, Reverend McDougall, and to all of you who have joined us here tonight. It is a great night here in Hilltop, USA. The West Side is the best side. At least until I head to the East Side tomorrow morning. No, it's great to be with you, and I'm grateful for all of the work that's taken place thus far, to Director William Scott and to Nick Bankston and to the Neighborhood Design Center, our incredible team here at the Glenwood Community Center, and to all of you. You all have heard me say it before, and you will hear me say it again. My top 3 priorities as mayor: neighborhoods, neighborhoods, neighborhoods. And it's critically important that we stay focused on strong and vibrant neighborhoods. We know they're the backbone of our great city, of our past, and of our future. The Hilltop is one of our oldest neighborhoods, appealing in the 1800s for its location elevated above the floodplain, but still in close proximity to downtown. Now the neighborhood is experiencing significant distress from decades of disinvestment in housing, in businesses. If it's mentioned in the media, oftentimes it's for its decline. But the Hilltop has a sense of pride among residents and an incredible strong community spirit. That's what we've tapped into when we began the process to envision Hilltop. Over the last 18 months, our Department of Neighborhoods have listened to the residents of the Hilltop, what you need and what you want for your neighborhood. More than 100 of you turned out for planning sessions and review. In a few minutes, Nick Bankston will unveil the Envisioning Hilltop Plan that focuses on people, place, and home. It's an extensive plan with a total of 27 goals for the health and stability of families, for increasing businesses, safety, and mobility, and for creating a mixed-income neighborhood with increased home ownership. Friends, these goals aren't simple, and they won't be accomplished overnight. I was asked on my way in here, why such a vast list? Why so comprehensive? Why not just try a few things? I said, the people of the Hilltop deserve what people in neighborhoods across this city deserve: an incredible quality of life with a comprehensive plan to focus on safety, health, well-being, and opportunity. The people of the Hilltop are not going to settle for whatever's left over from the rest of the city. The people of this neighborhood deserve the very best. And the people of this neighborhood and throughout the West Side are why this city is such a special city. Cities, great cities, are made up of distinctive, diverse, and thriving neighborhoods. If neighborhoods aren't healthy and thriving, the city can't reach its full potential, and nor can the people that live there. I guarantee from the very beginning, similar to our One Linden plan, this was not a planning process for a report to sit on a shelf. And what you've already seen in Linden and some of the things you've already seen here on the Hilltop are evidence of that. Just over the last couple of years, we've invested $17 million in the West Broad Street streetscape, $54 million in blueprint to reduce the occurrence of water in basements, flooding homes, and providing sub pumps to those homes and reducing sewer overflow into streets. Nearly $1 million for sidewalks and neighborhood bikeways, and the opening of this center, Glenwood Recreation Center. We will continue investing in the Hilltop, but building a strong neighborhood cannot be done by one entity alone. We need partners, we need you, and we need our private and nonprofit leaders in this community as well, stepping up and investing in the quality of life of the Hilltop. I want to thank all of you who have participated in the process so far. Especially want to thank the people at the J. Ashburn Boys and Girls Club for letting us use your space for all of our meetings. And tonight, as was just mentioned, is the beginning of a journey ahead. The Hilltop is one of our oldest and greatest neighborhoods with an incredible, proud history. I believe us working together, being in public and private, and implementing this plan that was shaped by you, driven by you, informed by you, the future of the Hilltop has never been brighter. Let me turn things over to Nick Bankston.
Thank you, Mayor. And can we just give the Mayor one more round of applause? Truly a champion for neighborhoods in Columbus and a Columbus native himself. As I stated before, I'm Nick Bankston. I serve as your project manager for neighborhood transformation for the city of Columbus. And what is that? And so my role really is to oversee the planning process, but not just the planning process of this work, the implementation thereafter. And so what I'm really excited about is that the mayor's talking points are not just talking points. When we say neighborhoods are our priority, that is what we mean. And so this work will be driven out of the Department of Neighborhoods. And I'm excited, and I might get in trouble for announcing this, but Lucy McMahon, where are you? Raise your hand. Lucy's in the back there. Stand up, Lucy, so people can see you and wave. Lucy just joined our team yesterday, so don't y'all go ask her no questions, okay? I just showed her where the restroom is. She don't have any business cards. But when you talk about commitment, Lucy's coming on to our team full time to help us manage the implementation of this plan. Again, driven by the city, but it will take multiple partners over multiple years. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get to transformation overnight. But this city and this administration is dedicated to this plan and is dedicated to your vision that we wrote together. And so we're going to go through a quick presentation, and then if you are familiar with it, envisionhilltop.com is the planning website, and the full plan will be there for you to review and download as well. So we're going to go through this real quick. Matt is going to come up. Everybody say hi, Matt. So Matt is, a lot of folks, you know, we worked really closely together with the Neighborhood Design Center, was our lead consultant on this work. Matt is the senior planner for the Neighborhood Design Center and really the chief architect, if you will, behind the plan. So thank you for your work and leadership. So without further ado, we'll jump into the Hilltop Community Plan. So first off, what is a community plan? And we talk about this before. What differentiates a community plan from either our neighborhood plans or some other plans that you have for the neighborhood? The difference here is a community plan is a framework for the future physical and social investments of an area that relies on the guidance from residents and stakeholders. So not just talking about land use or design guidelines, but really looking at neighborhoods holistically that is driven by resident feedback and input. And so how did we get here? The plan itself was a 4-phase process. Understanding the community, which really ran through the entire gamut. That was outreach that we did in the community, really getting to dive deep and talk with you all. A lot of folks always ask me, why does it, for these large-scale plans, why 18 months, or why does it take so long? Well, data is nothing more than numbers on a paper without the context. And you live this context. And so for us, it's about building relationships and about understanding and making sure that we truly understand what is going on here, because this is your neighborhood that you have to go home to every day. So understanding the community was a very vital piece of the phase one and ran through the entire process. Market research, so doing a deep dive into both the real estate market side of things from a housing standpoint, but also the economic side of things from a small business standpoint. Community meetings and events. Again, we had extensive community meetings, and we'll go through that here. And then last but not least, of course, the draft and finalization of the plan. So here's the timeline, just to remind us of where we've been and throughout this process. And then when we talked about events hosted, so we hosted as a part of the official planning process 15 events. So just by a show of hands, how many came to one of the monthly meetings? Don't be shy. Good. And so you remember those meetings that we had. So we hosted monthly meetings around this plan. There were individual activities, everything that went on with that. We also hosted some other kind of focus groups and did some youth engagement as well. So 15 events that we hosted. We also attended 30 events. So those were events that were already happening in the neighborhood. We were just out there meeting you where you were. You may have seen our big, bright yellow pop-up tent and came over and talked to Carrie, myself, or Matt. So we wanted to meet residents where you were. We weren't shoving surveys in your face, but really wanted to just hear your story about your experience here on the Hilltop. And so what did we hear? We heard a lot of things. There were a lot of priorities that were mentioned. There were a lot of issues that were raised. But in the end, we as a community and you all voted on top priorities. And so this is what we heard directly from you in that what residents voted on. So under education, really focusing on parent engagement, health and recreation, drug addiction and trafficking, employment and income, living wage jobs and training, For safety, really focusing on violent crime as the top priority. In business, trash and litter. Mobility, resident engagement and socialization. Home ownership, create attractions and amenities to draw new home buyers. Mixed income and affordability, really coming up with a diverse portfolio of housing that is affordable at all multiple income levels. And then last but not least, under quality, focusing on home repair, maintenance, and curb appeal. So these were the top priorities that were voted on by you. Also, if you recall, for those that came to the meetings, we came up with guiding principles. These were crafted by, edited by, and really adopted by the folks in that room, in that community. And these guiding principles are what was the framework for the plan. When we talk about getting the recommendations and 27 goals, which is a lot, and under those 27 goals, there's action steps for each of those. What was guiding those recommendations was the data that we collected, the feedback that we heard from you, and these guiding principles that we all came up with together. So this is really small text. So I'm gonna get really close so I can actually read it to you guys, okay? Because I know you can't see it. So for education, our guiding principle there is that all children will be prepared for diverse living wage jobs by integrating workforce development with academic and vocational experience. Health and recreation, every person deserves unrestricted access to high quality physical, mental, and emotional health care, including addiction, rehabilitation services, and primary care. Employment and income, opportunities and assistance for living wage employment will be accessible, achievable, retainable, and include the ability for advancement. Under place, for safety, our guiding principle was that the Hilltop will be a safe, secure, and inviting community for residents. For business, the Hilltop will support and sustain a variety of businesses to create a foundation of amenities and economic activity for residents and visitors. Mobility, Hilltop infrastructure will embrace a multimodal transportation network that is responsive to the needs of the community today and in the future. And last but not least, under the home pillar, home ownership, people will be encouraged and empowered to buy homes for neighborhood stability and community pride. Mixed income and affordability. The Hilltop will be home for people in a range of incomes while staying true to its diverse heritage. And for quality, housing on the Hilltop will be safe inside and out, and properties will be well maintained. So these were the guiding principles that we used in making the recommendations. These were the guiding principles that the advisory committee used when advising us on what the action steps should be. And so really, again, this is your voice that guided and shaped all the recommendations and action steps in the plan. And so, with those guiding principles, with those top priorities in mind, with all the data and all the research, and when you see the document, it's 160 some pages, right? That's a lot. But really wanted to be very thorough in our work. What we came up with is this product, Envision Hilltop, a community plan for shared success. So this is the name or cover of the plan, if you will. This was the name of the process, but this is what our document is. And now we're going to walk through what's inside the document, and then also we'll walk through all of the recommendations. So at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Matt.
Thanks, Nick. And we have you want to clap for Nick? Okay. He's definitely worth clapping for. Also, one more thing. Do you want to turn the lights down one more, or is this okay?
One more.
One more? Okay.
One more.
Thanks, Lisa. So the Hilltop Community Plan is divided, into 4 main sections. So first, the introduction sets the stage for the document. It acknowledges all of you who came to at least 2 meetings and offers an abbreviated executive summary of the plan recommendations. In the context section, we talk about history, detailed data, employment, former institutions, housing. We talk about that even more in the existing conditions section, where we give a snapshot of the reality facing Hilltop residents that really sets a foundation for why we make certain recommendations. So we had to take stock of what the numbers are in the neighborhood to really have a a foundation for those recommendations. In the activities section, we talk about every single meeting that we had, the results of every single meeting, quotes from you, all the results of your exercises. And then the Envision Hilltop section is the actual plan with specific recommendations and action steps that set the stage for future action. So in the introduction, again, we have acknowledgments, a letter from the mayor. So what I'm doing is giving you an overview of the plan, not exactly the contents, but how it's laid out and what's contained in each section. So you can browse it afterwards and then at your own time online also. So there's also neighborhood context, previous plans, which there's been many, history, housing, employment decline, population loss, what is a community plan, some conflicting boundary issues, and then some people and perception issues with kind of current events. So here's a map of the focus area, which is outlined in yellow. It's bound by the railroad tracks to the north, about Hague Avenue to the west, I-70 to the east, and Mount Street to the south. And this just shows that there's 2 zip codes that are kind of bisecting the study area, which makes data collection really difficult. So there's some problems that we just wanted to acknowledge in that. And then also the area commission boundaries on here, as you can see, the Greater Hilltop Area Commission is very large, and the focus area is just one small piece of that. So in the focus area, we've got about 19,000 people according to the most recent census. That's about 6,667 households. Again, these are estimates. And then the square miles, it's 2.8. So it's pretty small, mostly the historic core of the neighborhood. So again, I'm a history nerd. I did history in undergrad, so I really took pride in the history section of this plan. So please go through it with a fine-tooth comb. There's tons of pictures, and there's fun maps and sad maps. So take a look at that. This is the entrance of the grounds of the former Central Ohio Psychiatric Hospital, which many of you probably recognized. Employment, we talk about how it's hard to be a blue-collar neighborhood today without blue-collar jobs. So what happened to the Hilltop? Why is it in the state that it's in today? With well-paying factory jobs in the 50s through the 80s. We really wanted to acknowledge one of the major contributors to the decline of the neighborhood is loss of employment. Existing conditions. This section is very detailed. I'm not going to read all of these, but we talk about these in detail with statistics and maps and graphs, and I encourage you to look at that. We're going to talk about a few here. So one of the numbers from the census is the number of people that live and work in a specific area. So in the focus area, according to the most recent data, only 84 people live and work in the focus area boundary, which is really shocking. It's not a live-work community. It's kind of one or the other. So we would ideally like it to be live, work, and play, obviously. So many people are coming from outside the area. Actually, a third of the people coming to the Hilltop focus area live outside of Franklin County, which shows you that a lot of the employment is regional here. So people aren't coming from the streets next to the state office complex to work at the state office complex, for example. And then many people in the Hilltop have to travel very far for employment, which is a very big problem. So this is a map of Narcan. So Narcan is a drug that's used to revive people after an opioid overdose. So hotspots for the administration of Narcan, according to the fire department, are Hilltop, Franklinton, the Near East Side, and the South Side. So I think everybody in this room knows the toll the opioid epidemic has taken on the Hilltop, and we wanted to acknowledge that in the plan. This is just a heat map of violent crime for 4 years. It's concentrated along commercial corridors, like Broad and Sullivan, but many households are also facing serious violent crime that contributes to trauma and instability for families and children. So we wanted to acknowledge that as well. You can see it seems as though the majority of addresses in the focus area have had a reported violent crime. So for transportation, we want to acknowledge that many households don't have access to a vehicle. So their plan recommendations do not place cars at the center of the recommendations. That we want to acknowledge a lot of people are walking and biking and taking transit. So 17% of households don't have a car, and then another 44% are sharing a car. So a lot of people are getting around with other means. Inflation-adjusted median household income. So this is how we're looking at the Hilltop relative to the county over time. So in 1950, you can see the Hilltop's median income exceeded that of Franklin County, which means it was a blue-collar or slightly higher neighborhood to live in. And since then, it's been declining, and the gap between the Hilltop focus area and the region has gotten wider, which points to increasing economic segregation, which is a theme throughout the country at this point. Evictions filed. This work was done by Stephanie Pierce at Ohio State. I want to acknowledge that. It's really difficult work. I did not do this. She did it. So evictions are really traumatizing for people, especially children. So housing instability can very much impact academics, for example. And so hundreds of people, hundreds of households are having trouble paying rent, and that's leading to a host of other issues that occur without a safe and stable place to call home. So you can see all of these in just 1 year have faced eviction. This is housing choice vouchers. These are vouchers given to private landlords to pay for a portion of renters' rent. So the Hilltop, according to federal data, doesn't seem to be oversaturated with housing vouchers, especially when compared to other neighborhoods like South Linden and the Near East Side. You can see on the map over, the red spot is over by Alum Creek Drive, and then the orange area is kind of the north central South Linden area. The Hilltop is about 9% of rental units are being paid for with a voucher, which is pretty low. Not as low as Clintonville, but it's pretty low. Planning activities. So this was what I think was the most fun, was coming together every month with you guys and getting to know you by name and just kind of learning more about you every month. So transparency was really key for us. After each event, we immediately uploaded all the materials to the website. So if you couldn't come to the event, you could go online and see what happened. At our monthly meetings, we did group activities, individual activities, discussion-based things. We did voting, map-based exercises. This yellow map is an example of a heat map where we asked people to put stickers on the map where housing investment should occur, and then we aggregated all of them to create this map. So I think our exercises were pretty fun and unique, and I think a lot of people appreciated them. And then this is our workbook, which it's going to go through a little video. We made a workbook every month that had the agenda, and we had some demographic information about the neighborhood, and then most importantly, the event results from the previous events. So each time we just added to the book so you could see what we did last time. So again, this is important for people that missed meetings and needed to catch up, and again, for transparency. So those are all online if you want to check them out. You can see how things evolved and how things built off of one another. So online, again, if people couldn't come, we wanted to have an option for them to interact online. So this was a wiki map. Wiki just means it's like a group editable thing online. So you didn't have to log in or anything. You could just go onto this map, put a thing that you care about, like speeding or crime or vacant house or something. So 25% of the categorized answers were about speeding, which is kind of intense. But you can see, I hope this works. That's all speeding, the car there. So somebody got really happy there, or really sad, I guess, about speeding in their neighborhood. So we also wanted to have positive comments left, so people did. So Cream and Sugar, for example, is a bright, positive oasis in the Hilltop Business Desert. That was a nice, positive thing. And then the boulevards on the streets that have them are awesome features of the neighborhood, which I completely agree with. So 357 individual, these are unique comments were left. There were a lot more total comments, but it was the same people leaving different comments. So focus groups. So outside of the public monthly meetings, we had focus groups that were targeted to landlords. I attended, I think, 2 legal aid outreach sessions at Crossroads, UMC. Social services focus group, recreation and leisure, youth engagement, and K-12. So these were private discussions that we had where people could feel comfortable sharing their professional expertise. The knowledge we gained from them was extremely important to giving us a well-rounded picture of the challenges and opportunities in the Hilltop. Of course, it's important to hear from residents, but we wanted to hear from people that devote their professional career to working for Hilltop families as well. Engagement survey. So we wanted to ask people how we did, so we did that in May. And 97% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that their opinions were valued during meetings, and 97% also agreed or strongly agreed that the meetings were focused on getting resident input and feedback. So I was pretty proud of that. The average age was 42. The average years in the Hilltop was 15. 75% had attended a previous meeting, which means a lot of people felt comfortable coming to repeat meetings, so we had recurring attendees, which means they didn't think it was so terrible they didn't want to come back, which was good. And then about 60% were homeowners. So now Nick's going to talk about the plan.
And Matt's going to stay up here with me because we're going to bounce around, so you don't just have to hear me talking all the time. So this is really the meat of the document. So when we talk about the Envision Hilltop Plan and that document, those are all the sections. And really, I would just want to pause and say that it's a lot of data to go through. It's a lot of the input, but we were really heavily focused on transparency and really telling that story and giving the context as to why the recommendations that we're making. I will say that some of the recommendations are really bold. The Hilltop needs coordinated intervention to emerge as a stable neighborhood. And so the strategies that you see in the planning section are diverse, some are practical, some are bold, and some are truly visionary. I think it's important to note that the input that we received from you all, and even the data that we received, some of these recommendations in this plan are not just Hilltop focused, but these are citywide implications, citywide policies and citywide practices, and even in some cases, state-level policies that need to be changed. We were very comprehensive, and we were not going to shy away from big, bold recommendations. And so I think that you are to be commended because the work that I think that you all did and some of these recommendations in this plan will have, at some point, citywide implications. And that started right here on the Hilltop. So, again, we talk about the pillars of the plan. There were 3 pillars: people, place, and home. And so the plan is really broken out into those 3 pillars. Under each pillar are sub-pillars, and then for that there are 3 goals for each of the sub-pillars. Make sense? Okay. So under people, under the health and recreation sub-pillar, there are 3 goals. Goal 1 is to improve conditions, amenities, programs, and access to parks and community centers. So a lot that we heard was around standardizing times at rec centers, making sure that amenities in the neighborhood are accessible, making sure that parks are in walking distance, and those kind of things. So we addressed that in Goal 1. Goal 2 is to address the impact of substance abuse on families and communities. So really coming up with a comprehensive approach of how do we get those residents that are dealing with addiction the help, but also their families the help that they need as well, because we know that addiction doesn't just impact that individual, it impacts families. Increase access to mental, physical, and financial wellness opportunities. So again, thinking about health as a holistic approach, so even that financial wellness as well. Under the education and schools sub-pillar, Goal 4 is to position schools as community hubs and expand on-site wraparound services. And so we, from our focus group with K through 12 professionals, as well as what we heard from you all, is really making sure that we have those wraparound services on site and meeting families where they are, so positioning our schools as hubs for community wraparound services. Increasing pre-K enrollment and improving child care quality, so having access to more high quality pre-K opportunities. Improving college and career readiness, so making sure that no matter what you choose to do after high school, that you are ready for either a career or college. And also under people in the employment and income section, Goal 7 is to use education and training programs to prepare people for employment. So we know that, again, there was a strong blue-collar neighborhood here, a lot of those factory jobs, which are not probably coming back. So how do we retool the community and get them prepared for those jobs in the different job centers around the city and around the region? Incentivize higher wages and offer more robust employee benefits. So this is really looking at how we as the city offer incentives. So not just tying it to necessarily the wages, which is a good thing, but how are we looking at what benefits are those employers also offering to their employees? Considering wealth building opportunities for Hilltop residents. So this is really looking at how are we not just raising people's wages and incomes, but also coming up with strategies that helps to build wealth. And so for each of the goals, there's actually a visionary concept. For the purposes of this presentation, we're just going to focus on one visionary concept per pillar. And so for the people pillar, which all of you have heard this, you've been a part of the planning around this. We're really excited because construction is starting this year. But the new pre-K center on the Hilltop will bring high quality early childhood education and wraparound services to the neighborhood. So federal funding for government, they spend $10 billion a year on Head Start. And that only covers about 33% of eligible children. And so the city is investing over $14 million to build this state-of-the-art pre-K center. Now, what we heard from residents and some of the issues that we hear that families face is that this won't just be a center just for pre-K, and it will serve 240 children in high-quality pre-K, but it also will have wraparound services for those families. So really creating a hub for the community. It will be located, and you can kind of see there, Matt, can you point to the site on there? It will be located right there. So you see Highland Elementary School right there, as well as J. Ashburn Boys and Girls Club. So really, our goal there is to create a campus, right? So for those kids and those families that have a campus that will also have services for the entire family. So we are really looking forward to that, and construction will start soon. And so we want to thank both our partners at Boys and Girls Club, as well as our partners at Columbus City Schools, and also kudos to the City of Columbus's Department of Education on their great work on this. And our next section is place.
Thanks, Nick. So business and economy, we really want to reinforce and strengthen key gateways into the neighborhood. So when you come into the Hilltop, you know where you are and you know that it matters that you're here. Use existing contributing structures and encourage new development in historic business districts. So when you're in the historic business district, you really feel like, oh, this used to be something. And we really want to capitalize on that and make it something to be, proud of again. So I think that's a really strong asset that the Hilltop has that other neighborhoods really don't. They don't have that historic core. Goal 12, increase local employment options that pay a living wage. Wage stagnation is a huge problem. Why can't people afford things? Well, they don't get paid enough. So how can we pay people more? It's really hard. So mobility. Goal 13 is prioritize active and shared mobility. Active mobility means usually human-powered. It could also mean shared mobility, which means scooters or microtransit or something else you don't own, but you're using it to get from point A to point B. Goal 14, address hazardous driver behavior. As we talked about on the wiki map, as we talked about with some of the priorities, at top of mind for people is hazardous driving, which is results in death for people and serious injuries. So that's a really big problem we want to change. Goal 15, improve access to employment centers. So again, only 84 people live and work in the Hilltop. How can we increase that number? And then how can we increase people's ability to get to employment centers that are locating maybe around 270, for example? Safety and crime, goal 16, focus on crime prevention. So we want to invest in people and make sure that they don't have a reason to commit, not that you always have a reason to commit crime, but you're less likely to commit crime. So that was something that people actually at our meeting said that I was really proud of when people didn't point to increasing prison time as a solution for crime. They said we need to invest in children, invest in people to make sure that they're in a place where they're comfortable and secure, period. Goal 17, address physical environment attributes that contribute to criminal activities. So some of that you're seeing is in the shot spotter and the illegal dumping cameras. So those types of interventions that can help reduce those kind of passive crimes. Goal 18, expand proactive and community policing techniques, which I think is going pretty well. People like the opportunity to interact with police in a non-confrontational way, and maybe not in their car, so they feel like they're friends and not, adversaries. So our featured visionary concept for this pillar is starting small, but starting today. The first idea doesn't have to be the best idea. It just needs to be something. So low-cost interventions can help bolster local businesses and improve perception of the Hilltop by creating memorable community destinations. So this is just one example that we made up of a taco stand that could be a little bit more fun and interactive and playful and draw visitors, perhaps. So Broad Street has about 20,000 vehicles going by every day. Rarely do people stop to get a taco at a place like this, but hopefully we can increase that through pretty low-cost physical improvements to help entice drivers to stop, help create a sense of identity and recognition, and raise the profile of the business. And this would just be accomplished through colorful graphics, lighting, picnic tables. So again, this is pretty low-key stuff, but I think starting somewhere and starting now is more important than waiting for the perfect idea to come.
And last but not least, our home pillar. So goal 19 under housing quality is to promote quality management and maintenance of rental properties. So I think it's no secret that there are higher renter rate than home ownership rate, right? And we don't necessarily think that renting is a bad thing, but we want to have high quality rental in our neighborhood. And how do we incentivize proper property management? Incentivize rehabilitation and renovation of properties. So we also did a housing study for the neighborhood, and one of the key recommendations in that was to start with the housing stock that we already have in the Hilltop. So we actually have very good bones and very good structure. Really, a lot of the housing that you see in the Hilltop could not be replicated again. So how do we incentivize and invest in rehabilitation of the current housing stock that we have to give us that diverse portfolio of housing that we're looking for? Ensure that, and goal 21, ensure housing units meet the changing needs of occupants. So again, part of this work was looking at other studies, so age-friendly Columbus and the work that was done there, ensuring that we're building a community where residents can age in place and have those options in their neighborhood and don't have to leave. Mixed income housing. Goal 22, offer a variety of housing at levels affordable to multiple incomes. And so this was really a key point that we heard, that hammered home to us, and we heard it clear, is to not concentrate affordable housing or one type of housing in one area, but to really make sure that everyone on the economic scale has housing options within the neighborhood. Stabilize housing and prevent displacement. So again, I think you saw from the significant population decline, we have the opportunity to stabilize the current residents in the current neighborhood while welcoming in new residents. So making sure that gentrification is top of mind for us in the beginning and not necessarily an afterthought. Concentrate housing investments and reduce barriers to development. So the Hilltop is a very large neighborhood, and even within our study area, that's even a large area. So really in the beginning, concentrating those housing investments so that we can show impact and show and improve that the neighborhood is viable in some senses, but also how do we reduce the red tape and barriers to getting to development? So how do we get around some of those things as well? And we talk about that in the plan. And then last but certainly not least, home ownership. Goal 25, expand financial capacity for current and prospective homeowners. Goal 26, support a culture of shared homeowner prosperity to build community pride. And so that's really talking about building community cohesion in the neighborhood. And then last but not least, goal 27, enhance and add amenities to draw new home buyers. So really making sure that the amenities are not just for new home buyers, right? But those are amenities that can be shared by current residents, but amenities that will draw new investment and new home buyers to the neighborhood. And so our featured visionary concept for this, we talk about the community land trust. And so we want to stabilize the community land trust and expand properties into the Hilltop focus area for permanent affordability. So a little bit about the community land trust. It actually came out of our first planning exercise with Linden residents, but is a great tool, one of the tools we have to tackle affordability, long-term affordability in the city. So right now it is just been launched, and we have a first-time investment, and so again, we want to see that stabilize and grow. So the City of Columbus will be committing $3.8 million towards establishing the Central Ohio Community Land Trust, which is up and running now. What this will do is it will subsidize the difference between the developer's construction costs for the new homes and what the homeowner pays during the final sale price. And so basically what a community land trust does is it helps to, so basically we're going to build housing at the quality of what it costs. So if it costs $200,000 to build a house, that's what it costs to build a house. Well, we're targeting those families between 60% AMI and 100% AMI. And so if those families only qualify for, say, a $150,000 mortgage, then the community land trust with this initial investment will basically cover the difference of that $50,000 gap. So we're getting folks into quality housing and stabilizing the neighborhood. The community land trust homeowners, they will actually own the home, but the land that it sits on will be maintained ownership with the land trust, so therefore it cuts down on costs around land, property taxes, and those kinds of things, as well as it helps to put restrictions on the home sale. So when that seller goes to sell their home, they sell it back to the land trust, so then the land trust can then turn around and sell it to someone else that is in that economic price bracket. So therefore, we're having perpetuity of affordable housing in the neighborhood. So as the housing values continue to go up, we will still have a housing stock of homes available that are affordable to folks at those levels. So our goal there is to stabilize the community land trust and expand it to the Hilltop. Currently, it's in 4 neighborhoods. Those are 4 of our neighborhoods that home prices are increasing really, really fast. So we wanted to get in there and stabilize some of those neighborhoods and make sure that we have housing options for all folks on the economic ladder. So that's it. Let me hit the lights real quick. So that's a lot, right? It's a lot. It's a lot of work. And so I know the question that folks are wondering is, how is this going to get done? When is this going to get done, right? Especially for some of us that have been here a long time. It is going to take many years. This is not a one project. It's not one initiative. It's not one line item in the city's budget, but it is a commitment to long-term transformation. That work doesn't happen overnight. That work is messy. That work is frustrating. That work sometimes we don't get everything that we want. But what I will tell you is that that work needs you to be at the table. This plan is not something that's going to sit on the shelf. There are ideas in here that we didn't even wait till the plan was done and we started doing them. Lisa knows about her efforts around trash. And we heard from you during the planning process about illegal dumping, and that's when we took the steps to convert those 300-gallon trash cans to 90-gallon trash cans. And we took the steps to enforce stronger penalties on illegal dumping and try to catch folks, and we invested in more cameras. We've worked with Emerald Hernandez on our team in the Department of Neighborhoods to do alley cleanups, right? So those are just small samples of that we're not sitting around waiting, and that things are going to get done and we're going to be moving forward. The city is going to do our part. We're going to invest in, we're going to be a catalyst, but we need you to be our champions. We need you to hold us accountable. This document, as much as it is a guide for us to shape how we invest, it's also a call to the rest of the community to say, if you want to have an impact in the Hilltop, if you want to come do business here with us, this is the shared vision that we've come up with. And this is how you can help us, is help us with one of these 27 goals. In those 27 goals, there's different action steps. There's action steps that are small, that you as a resident or you as a community-based organization can take on. There are larger action steps that we're going to need multiple partners to accomplish. But I'm excited about the work that we are about to embark on. And again, we are in it for the long haul. And so I want to pause there and ask you to give the biggest round of applause to yourself for the work that you have done in this plan. The biggest round of applause. And then again, last but not least, envisionhilltop.com. Everything is there. This process has been completely transparent and completely open, so you can catch up and see what your residents and your fellow neighbors had to say and their input. Also, you can see some of the supplemental studies and materials that we use as well as for collecting data. That's all there on the website as well. So thank you all again for coming out on this evening. Thank you again for your input, and I'm looking forward to the work that we're going to do together. Good night, everybody.